So here's the new exciting motor from EMAX, the much awaited RS2306 2400 KV. Comes in two varieties, the 2750 KV and the 2400 KV. So two interesting KV values. As usual, it comes in a nice plastic box with all kinds of anti-counterfeiting stickers and stuff. So you gotta make sure you get it in this kind of packaging to avoid counterfeits. They pretty much they've been including the stickers, and I see that they don't include the Allen wrenches anymore. They used to include these every time, but not anymore. I got plenty of those laying around. So the motor comes well packaged. Comes with two sets of screws, and kind of a nice touch. They tell you which ones to use for the two different arm thicknesses, for 4mm and for 3mm. So that's pretty good. That's to avoid messing up the windings if you use two long screws and end up going through all the way to the windings. So that's a nice touch. And I also see they include an extra shaft retaining screw and washer, so that's another nice touch. By the way, I've also seen on the some of the posts on RC groups, they're gonna have the replacement belts available. It comes in a box of 2, so that's another good thing. These will be very serviceable because the retaining screw is actually pretty sturdy, so it's very easy to remove. It's not like the DYS ones that are kind of hard. You have to use the soldering iron trick. This one just comes off pretty easy with a good Allen wrench. You just gotta remove it slowly, and it'll come off. So the bell is pretty much similar to the RS2205S. It's got the cooling vanes, and the magnets are pretty beefy, pretty chunky. They're as you can see, they're curved magnets, and they're pretty well packaged, so there's not much gap in between magnets. So onto the stator, as shown on the specs, they're using 0.15mm laminations. The height of the stator is as spec'd. It is a 6mm high, tall stator. So no surprises there. The windings looks like they're multi-strand, and they do some kind of funky winding here. It's like they do some kind of knot there, but anyways, that works pretty well. Wires looks like either 3 or 4 wires per bundle that goes around, but that's worked pretty well for EMAX using multi-strand wire. There's been for a while there was still I think there was a trend of going with single strand wire, which has been touted to be more resilient and more capable of withstanding high amps. But this has worked well for EMAX. So, and there's also another school of thought regarding multi-strand versus single strand. With multi-strand, the thinking is that when you have smaller gauge wires, you're able to pack more copper per turn, because just simply because of geometry. When you have thinner wires in a bundle, there's gonna be less air voids between adjacent wires, whereas if you have a thicker gauge wire, when you put them side by side, there's gonna be larger unused areas, larger voids between wires. So both work pretty well. So you know, it's as long as they work, it doesn't matter which one's used. Just wanted to mention the one other thing that also single strand allows you in the windings is that you may, I'm not, don't quote me on this, it's just, I'm just thinking here, you may end up with a smaller end turns. This is what they call the end turn. This turn right here where the winding goes from this side of the stator, it goes back around. So these are the end turns. So I've been reading that at the end turns there's no force being produced, there's no electromagnetic force. So these are kind of like null areas. I believe the magnetic field goes like so. I could be wrong. So there's no force coming out through there. And what I read is that these are actually sort of like a weak point, and that's where the high voltage and heat concentrates. So the more copper that you have there, the more heat that could be produced. So if you can keep that part compressed, you get better performance. So with the single strand, because the wires don't pack as well, you may end up with a slightly taller end turns than with the multi-strand. So I don't know if that makes sense. Just something I was reading, just wanted to share with you. I'm just like reading stuff like that. It's kind of interesting. So yeah, this motor looks pretty good too. It's white. Don't know how good this is gonna keep clean, but it certainly looks pretty slick. It's kind of like a matte white finish. Looks pretty good, I think. The red bottom portion is similar to the RS, and the wires, length of wire they give you is about 70 millimeters. So that's plenty for most arm-mounted ESCs. If you're using 4 by 1 ESC, you'll need to add splicing additional wire to reach to the center of the frame. The one other thing they did go to on these, they went to 4mm shaft, so that's a pretty good thing. You know, thicker chaff, stronger, and they do use a fully hollow shaft, so that's hollow all the way through. That much else to say. So we'll go on to the actual thrust test and see how these motors perform. Okay, so here's the thrust test results for the new motor EMAX RS2306-2400KV. Pretty powerful motor. It was some pretty amazing results here on the larger props. Pretty much across the board, this motor is pretty much outperforming almost anything I've tested in this similar size. So EMAX has pretty much done pretty good right here. They've hit a home run per se. As you can see, 4-inch props. We're getting 1 kilogram static thrust. And then we move on to the larger props, the more common, more popular 5040 by 3. We're getting 1400 grams. Amps are pretty manageable, I think. Pretty close to a little bit higher than the 2205, but again, you're producing way more power. So we'll check out, compare it, at the 700 and 500. At the 700 thrust point, we'll see how it compares to the 2205. Dial props, the Cyclones, again above 1400, pretty manageable amps. The quad blade, almost 1500. The dial, the version 2, the 5046, 1500 grams. The Lumineer butter cutter, as Lumineer had mentioned, it needs 2206, 2207 type of motor with slightly higher than 2300 kV, so 25, 2600 kV, and yes, this prop is getting quite a lot of thrust. Still need to you need to try it, see how you like the the flight characteristics on that. I like it. I've flown it. It feels pretty good. But I'm not top ace pilot, so really you gotta try it, or maybe get see what others think, what the good pilots think about it. On the 6-inch prop, this is where this motor really blew the doors out of pretty much everything else. 1800 grams at quite a lot of amps, so you'll need a very powerful battery, good battery to run 6-inch blade at constant 100% throttle. Again, keep in mind these are static thrust. I'm using a power supply that doesn't have much voltage sag. So when you use a flight pack, you'll definitely be getting fewer amps and less thrust, of course. Again, these thrust tests are just meant for comparing motor to motor on their same test conditions. We're just trying to determine what each motor is capable of. Again, I've always said the actual amps are usually anywhere from 25 to 35% less of what I'm getting here on the test. That's ballpark. It really varies, depends on your quad's weight, your battery. There's all kinds of variables, so that's just an approximation. But it's a good point to start. If you want to be conservative, you can multiply these max amps by 0.65, and it'll give you a ballpark, a good approximation to what your max could be. Well, take that with a grain of salt, because it's different for every setup. Now going on to the comparison with the 2205 2300 kV. Let's look at a couple of props here. The 4040 by 3, pretty close. Again, this prop is not loading the motor a lot, so you don't need such a huge motor to drive it. So we're getting pretty similar. 900 at about 25 amps on the 2306, and at about 23.24. So pretty similar. Now let's look at the more commonly used 5040 by 3. Right here I used the DYS there, HQ here. They're about the same performance for both. So yeah, we got a slightly higher KV here, so a little bit more thrust, little bit more amps. So let's see, this one's slightly better. So for that prop, I really think the 2205 S version would probably match better. But when you move on to the larger props, like the 5040 by 4, let's see right here, 5040 by 4. This is where the 2306 starts to pull away. these props require more torque from the motor, more torque capacity, which the 2306 has. Advantage over the 2205, of course, is this is a 6 millimeter stator. This is a 5 millimeter stator, so it's got a larger diameter and taller height stator. So yep, here we're getting about 100 grams more, and then on the really the larger props that really stress the motor, this is where it really pulls away. We're looking at about 200 grams more thrust. Of course, the amps, of course, they go much higher. So here we can see on both 200 grams more. So there you have it. This motor is quite insane. Weight is not much more than the 2205, so this one's gonna be definitely a good motor to slap on your speed demon of a quad. So yep, this should be a good selling motor for EMAX. Now we just gotta wait to see as people abuse it and stress it. We'll get reports of how strong the motor really is. It certainly looks very well made, as per EMAX's quality. They've been doing pretty good work on motors. For the most part, I think large majority of people are always pretty happy with their EMAX motors. So yep, looks like they got a winner. So thanks for watching. I'll have the 2750 kV results in a few days. So keep checking. See you next time.